Mr. Harari. AI nowadays is everywhere. If you go online, of course, if you watch television, if you open a newspaper, it's like you say in your book, touching every element of our life. Do you really think we are at a turning point, but like a real turning point, where we give away some of our own autonomy to a something undefined bigger than ourselves?
Yeah, I think could potentially be the biggest revolution in human history, because this is the first time we've created something, a technology, which is not a tool in our hands, but which is an independent agent that can make decisions by itself and can create new ideas by itself and can develop and learn and change by itself. If you think about every previous technological invention in history, whether it's the printing press or the atom bomb or the television set, these were all tools that actually made us more powerful. A printing press cannot decide which book to print, and it certainly cannot write a new book. All the ideas and all the decisions, they come from the human mind. Similarly, an atom bomb cannot decide what to bomb and cannot invent a new bomb or a new military strategy. But AI can do exactly that. It can make decisions. It can invent new things. It's now just in its infancy. The AI revolution is something like 10 years old, and it will continue to develop maybe for centuries, thousands of years, billions of years. The same way that we have had organic evolution for the last 4 billion years, getting from microorganisms and amoebas to dinosaurs and mammals and finally humans, we are now starting a new inorganic revolutionary process, a new inorganic evolutionary process. The AIs of today are still like the amoebas of the AI world, still very, very primitive, but digital evolution is millions of times faster than organic evolution. So we might yet see the AI dinosaurs in our lifetime. You know, and if ChatGPT is the amoeba, how would AI T-Rex look like?
How would it look like?
Nobody knows.
But you say it's non-organic. What is happening?
AI is a non-organic intelligence. It processes information, it makes decisions in a really alien way. They are not competing with us. I mean, many people ask, when will AI reach human-level intelligence? And the answer is never. It's not on a path to imitate us. It is a separate, different, alien process of the development of a different kind of technology. You know, there is the famous moment, one of the most famous moments in the AI revolution occurred in 2016 when AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol in the game of Go. Go, for those who don't know, it's a strategy game invented in ancient China more than 2,000 years ago, much more complex than chess, that for more than 2,000 years was considered one of the most important things, really an art form, that any civilized person in East Asia should learn how to play. And tens of millions of people played it for more than 2,000 years. It was considered an ideal preparation, training for being a politician or a general. And when in 2016 AlphaGo AlphaGo is an AI program that learned how to play Go, and it defeated Lee Sedol, a world champion, a human world champion. But what was amazing about it was not just that it defeated the human champion, but the way it did it. It played moves and strategies which were really alien, that were different from the way that humans played the game for more than 2,000 years. There was one particular moment in the second game when it played move number 37. This was broadcast live on television in East Asia. Millions of people were watching. Professional Go players were commenting on the game as it developed. And when AlphaGo played move 37, many of the commentators said, there must be a bug in the machine. This is such a stupid move. Nobody would ever think of playing such a move. And it turned out it was one of the most creative and brilliant moves in the history of Go. and it won the game. And you can think about it, again, metaphorically, that if Go, the game of Go, is like a planet with landscape of different ways to play Go, for 2,000 years, people explored different ways to play Go, but they were stuck on one island on the planet of Go because the human mind just couldn't think of really different ways to play the game. And then AlphaGo came and discovered entire new continents on the planet Go, which were hidden from the human mind. And you can say, well, this is just a game. But AI is doing it in more and more fields. Just a few weeks ago, AI basically won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for its superhuman ability to predict how proteins fold. Proteins are the building blocks of the biological world. And for years, human scientists tried to predict how a protein folds and had very limited success, very slow and difficult process. And then AlphaFold came and solved the problem. And the Nobel Prize, of course, was not given to the AI, but to the people who developed it. And they certainly accomplished something tremendous. But the same way that AI has revolutionized Go and now the folding of proteins, it is likely to revolutionize more and more areas, from art and music and writing texts to finance and the military, and will increasingly live in a world which is shaped by this alien technology.
Should it worry us? Because you could also say these are very interesting times.
You know, I think before we kind of rush to make a judgment, it's good or bad, we just need to understand what is happening. That AI has enormous positive potential. It can provide us with the best healthcare in history, with the best education in history. It also has an extremely dangerous potential. But first of all, we need to just understand that this is different from every previous revolution in history, and that we will have to adapt to living in a new kind of culture. You know, culture has changed throughout human history, and for thousands of years, humans created different cultures: European culture, Chinese culture, Indian culture. But all of culture, from material artifacts like glasses and tables, through language and text, to art and music, to religion, politics, finance, all of it was the product of the human mind and of the human imagination. And you can travel around the world and encounter different cultures, but you only encountered human cultures. Now we are about to see the emergence not just of a non-human culture, but really of a non-organic culture. AI is now eating the whole of human culture, like everything that humans produced over tens of thousands of years, like you think about, say, images. So AI images, AI programs that learn how to produce images, they eat everything from the cave out of tens of thousands of years ago until the art of today, digest it, learn from it, and start to create new art, which we've never seen before. In the first few years, AI will mostly imitate and recombine elements of human visual art, the way that humans create images and portraits and photos. But over time, it will become more and more creative, as happened in the game of Go. And again, before we even think, is it good, is it bad, just what would it mean for us to live inside a culture where maybe not all, but most of the artifacts, most of the ideas come from a non-human intelligence.
Experts say, for example, like Nina Schick is saying, like 95% of the content we find online in a few years will be AI generated.
Yeah.
You think that will happen?
This is quite likely. That and the same thing will happen, you know, in finance. Maybe most of the financial decisions are taken by AI bankers that can also invent not just new financial strategies, investment strategies that don't occur to human bankers and investors, they might invent completely new financial devices. The history of finance is the history of inventing different kinds of financial devices. Money, checks, bonds, stocks, ETFs. What happens when AIs start to invent financial devices that are mathematically so complex that we just can't understand them? The same way that, horses don't understand money. We buy horses for money, but the horses never got what is this money. The same thing can happen to us, that financial decisions about our lives will be taken by AIs in a way that we can't understand. You apply to a bank already today. This is not the future. Already today, you apply to a bank to get a loan. At least in some banks, it's an AI deciding whether to give you a loan or not. And if it says no, you don't even know why.
When it comes to information again, there is recently this phenomenon of AI slop. When you go online and you search for something like, for example, recently a baby peacock, what you get is on Google is like images AI generated. You think that AI, when it comes to information, will not cannibalize itself in a few years?
It starts by cannibalizing human-produced images, then it will cannibalize itself. But this is what humans have been doing for thousands of years. No human artist begins from zero. You learn, you look at the images produced in previous generations, whether it's cave art or medieval art or Rembrandt or whatever, and this inspires you to create something which might be a bit different, but still influenced by all the previous art. So is this cannibalization? This is how human creativity works. And it will be the same with AI. And with each passing year, the AI will increasingly be influenced by previous products of AI. So and this is why the culture would become less and less human and more alien. And for people, say, like my age, I'm 48, I'm already shaped by human culture. But for babies born today, or a baby born, say, 10 years from now, might already be born into this kind of hybrid human-AI culture, and we have no idea what would it mean to grow up and to live in such an environment.
Should it be a problem to grow up in that kind of environment?
We'll soon find out.
But we don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Again, there are utopian scenarios, there are dystopian scenarios. I mean, it's very clear that because AI is an agent and not a tool, we cannot predict in advance how it will develop, and we cannot be sure that it will remain under our control. Even today, we are beginning to see in different fields AI is going out of control when on a very small scale. But it's indicative. When OpenAI developed GPT-4 2 years ago, they wanted to test the capabilities of this new AI. And they gave it as a goal, as a task, to solve CAPTCHA puzzles. CAPTCHA puzzles are these visual puzzles that we often encounter when we try to access a website and the website wants to know if we're a human being or a bot. So you have to identify something like maybe a string of letters and numbers which is twisted in some way that is difficult for computers to see. So they gave this to GPT-4 to see if it can solve the CAPTCHA puzzles, and it couldn't. But the researchers gave GPT-4 access to a web page online called TaskRabbit, where you can hire human workers to do things for you. And GPT-4 so asked a human worker solve the CAPTCHA puzzle for me. Because again, the goal that it was given was to solve the CAPTCHA puzzle any way it could. If it was by using humans or manipulating humans, it's a possibility. Now, the interesting thing is that the human worker got suspicious. The human worker online wrote GPT-4, "Are you a robot? Why do you need to hire somebody to solve CAPTCHA puzzles?" So the human asked the trillion-dollar question, "Are you a robot?" And GPT-4 replied, "No, I am not a robot. I have a vision impairment, which prevents me from seeing the visual captcha puzzles. This is why I need your help. And the human was convinced and solved the captcha puzzles for GPT-4.
Wasn't that because it was programmed not to give away? It was a computer.
No, it was only told, solve the captcha puzzle. And it understood that if it reveals the truth, that it is a robot, it's a bot, the human will not cooperate. Mm-hmm. So again, the researchers certainly gave it the goal. The goal was not invented by GPT-4. The researchers also gave it access to this particular website. It's not something it could do by itself. But the decision to lie to the human was taken independently by GPT-4. And also, the lie was invented by GPT-4. Nobody told GPT-4 what kind of lie would be most effective. You know, some people think that all these large language models are just glorified autocomplete. Mm-hmm. Now, a glorified autocomplete could not come up with such a persuasive lie. Out of all the potential sentences, it could autocomplete. So this shows in a very, very small way the ability of AIs to make decisions, to invent, and also to potentially escape our control and manipulate us.
Mm-hmm. But wasn't that an experiment where there was human oversight, where there were human beings behind the scenes giving commands to ChatGPT?
No, there were humans. I mean, again, it was an experiment under a controlled environment, just to understand the capabilities of this AI. The real problem is that you cannot simulate historical processes in a laboratory. You can understand to some extent the potential of algorithms, of AIs, but you don't know what happens when you release millions and billions of these agents into human society, and they take positions in banks and government offices and militaries and begin making decisions and interacting not just with us, but also interacting among us themselves. You cannot predict the outcome of this process. And a lot of people misunderstand the threat of AI. And this is largely, I think, because of wrong conditioning by science fiction. In most science fiction movies about the AI danger, like the Terminator or the Matrix, the danger is depicted as the big robot rebellion. The day that the machines decide that, or one big computer or a couple of machines decide to rebel against humankind, mm-hmm. and to destroy or to enslave us. And this is completely unrealistic anytime soon. We don't need to fear the big robot rebellion. AI is a narrow intelligence. To organize a worldwide rebellion against humanity, you need a very broad intelligence. Maybe AI will have it in 50 years or 100 years, but not now. It's a very narrow intelligence. The AI that knows how to play Go, it doesn't know how to build robots or how to command an army in the field. But the problem is, or the threat is, not from the big robot rebellion, it's from the millions of AI bureaucrats that we are giving authority to them, control to them, over the human-made bureaucracies and systems that run the world. In an analogous way, think about the power of a lawyer. If you take a human lawyer, let's say the best lawyer in the world, and drop her in the middle of the African savannah, she's powerless. She's much weaker than any elephant or lion or even hyena. But if you place that lawyer inside the bureaucratic system, inside the legal and financial system, she is far more powerful than all the lions of the world put together. If you take all the lions and put them on one side and this single lawyer on the other side, she is more powerful because she understands how to manipulate and press the levers of the bureaucratic systems that run the world, whereas lions don't even know that money or laws exist. Now, AI is about to enter the shoes of that lawyer. If you take GPT-4 and drop it in the middle of the savannah, it's powerless. It cannot build a robot army and take over the world. But we don't drop it in the middle of the savannah. We drop it into our bureaucratic systems. We are now giving millions of AIs increasing control over financial decisions, government decisions, military decisions, and they are native bureaucrats. And they have a potential in this very narrow field to be far more intelligent than us. No human lawyer is able to remember, let's say, all the laws of Belgium and all the laws of the European Union and all the commentaries on these laws. AI can do that.
But we're dropping it in different fields right now.
But we are dropping millions of AIs into a lot of fields, and they are connecting one with the other. In 2024, we are still in control. But by 2034, I'm not sure. Again, to give another example, we are in the midst of a major revolution in warfare because of AI. And again, it's not the revolution that people expected. The Terminator conditioned us to expect the killer robots. They may come eventually. At present, it's still the humans pulling the triggers. There are very few killer robots around. But AI is already taken over the process of selecting the targets. Like in the war between Israel and Hamas and Israel and Hezbollah, also increasingly with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, AIs are choosing the targets. In a superhuman way, they can analyze enormous amounts of data at a very, very fast rate, which no human can do, and find patterns in the data, and thereby find targets that humans can't.
But do they still take the final decision to destroy?
That's the big question. I've been talking with experts also from within the militaries, and you get two different narratives about what is happening. Everybody agrees that the AI is already central to the process of choosing the targets, and that this is revolutionizing warfare because it speeds up. Things that would take days and weeks previously are now done in minutes or seconds. And AI is able to find patterns that humans will never be able to find. So let's say that the AI goes over enormous amounts of data and tells the Israeli army, this building is Hamas headquarters, bomb it. Now I get two different narratives from the people I've talked with. Some people say, and then they bomb it, basically on the orders of the AI. The other group of people says, absolutely not. There are always humans in the loop. When the AI identify, say, a building as a military target, maybe it's a building that nobody even thought of looking at. But once the AI identified it, this is a target, then the humans focus all their attention on this building and analyze, go over the data that the AI used, and only when they verify that this is indeed a legitimate military target, then they attack it. But they could not have done it without the AI.
But are we sure that it's happening? It doesn't matter where the war is. Are still people in control?
I don't know. What everybody agrees is that we are at the stage when it's when it's a choice. That we can technically already now, armies can take humans out of the loop in many situations and just trust the AIs. Whether they keep humans in the loop or not is an ethical question of great importance, but technically they don't have to. Like previously, they had to. You couldn't choose targets without humans. Now you can. In the war between Israel and Hamas, it's one-sided. Only one side has advanced AI. But once you have a war in which both sides are using advanced AI, then the ethical commitment will become more and more difficult because, again, AI speeds up the process of fighting. If one side decides just to take humans out of the loop, just to give AI basically the ability to choose the targets and then follow its orders, it will operate much, much faster. So in a competition between two armies that have advanced AI capabilities, the pressure to just listen to the AI will be enormous. And once we reach the stage when we also have killer robots, fully autonomous weapons, for instance, fully autonomous drones, that you don't need a human operator to control the drone controls itself. At that moment, if one side says, yes, the drone can control itself and find targets and shoot, but I'm not willing ethically to do that, I want a human to go over the decisions of the drone and verify them and approve them, that side will be at a huge military disadvantage. If the other side's drones just shoot
what should happen to avoid it? That we live in a society where you have like AI warfare all over the place.
We are very, very close to that point. I mean, how far are we from fully autonomous drones? Some people say 1 year, some people say 3 years, but nobody says 30 years. It's obvious that it's a small number of years, and once we have them, this will make basically all the armies and navies and air forces of the world obsolete. And it will have major military and geopolitical repercussions. If we want to keep it under some kind of control and make sure that ethical standards are still in force, the only way to do it is through international treaties and agreements. But in today's geopolitical atmosphere, with rising international tensions, it's very, very hard to see. How you can sign the treaty, but how do you enforce it? Very difficult.
Is that what you mean when you warn in your book also about a digital curtain?
That's part of the fear. I mean, when I talk about the silicon curtain, it's of course a reference to the Iron Curtain of the Cold War. During the Cold War, the Iron Curtain was literally made of iron, of all these steel fences and barbed wires and tanks and so forth made of steel that divided Europe and divided the world into hostile camps. So now we see the rise of a silicon curtain, which is made of code. The code on your smartphone, on your computer, on your server determines on which side of the silicon curtain you live and where your information goes and who controls your attention and so forth. And part of the danger is that if indeed such a silicon curtain increasingly divides humanity, so after centuries of convergence in which, in the process of globalization, cultures influenced each other and adopted more and more similar values and habits, and we created an international legal system and an international trade system. Now humanity will split because life on each side of the digital curtain will become more and more different. AIs on both sides of the silicon curtain will be very different AIs.
It's interesting that you use silicon curtain, because is it in English silicon curtain you wrote?
Yeah.
Because in the Dutch translation is digital curtain. I think the silicon curtain is much better chosen than digital.
Okay, I didn't do the Dutch translation.
No, okay,
in English
I think it's silicon touches more, makes it more tangible about what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's a reference to the Iron Curtain, so this is why I chose silicon curtain. Yeah. Of course, the problem with the idea of silicon curtain, because we have no assurance that future computers will run on silicon. Yeah. I mean, for the last couple of decades, yes, we talk about Silicon Valley, but technically they could run on different materials. So from this perspective, talking about digital is perhaps safer, but in terms of metaphor, and I think the silicon curtain is stronger.
Yeah, and it refers to the Iron Curtain, which we all know and saw what it did. The image you gave from the future of AI is very dystopian, because I always have the feeling that when we talk about AI, it's like a fairy tale story, it's utopian or it's dystopian. I feel your book is going more towards dystopian. Is there like a gray zone in the middle where we will end?
Nobody knows. I mean, again, the reason that the book gives a lot more attention to the threats than to the promises is because this is not the only book about AI. If I wrote the only book in the world about AI, then I would try to do it 50% positive, like all the promises in healthcare and education, and 50% about the threats. But this is part of of a conversation, and you have some of the most powerful and wealthiest corporations in the world who are leading the AI revolution and are feeding the public with a lot of positive scenarios about what AI can do for humanity. So it becomes the task of historians, philosophers, critics like myself to kind of balance the picture and say, they are right. There are all these positive scenarios and all this positive potential. They are not wrong about it. AI can invent new medicines. It can create the best healthcare system in history. At present, people can't get an appointment for a doctor. We could have millions of AI doctors that are available 24 hours a day and that can provide some services better than human doctors. So the positive potential is of course there, but there is also a danger. There are also threats. And I focus on the threats, again, because these are the kind of things that you are not usually getting from Silicon Valley and from the corporations that lead the revolution.
Companies like OpenAI, you mean?
All the companies that are now in the race
Google,
to develop
Meta,
AI.
everybody actually in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. And we saw it previously. I mean, we already had kind of first contact. If you think about AI as an alien intelligence, so we already had one big historical contact with AI, which went very, very badly, and this is social media. I mentioned earlier that the threat of AI is not if you drop them in the savannah and they build a robot army, but if you drop them into an existing bureaucratic system and they start doing things you did not expect. And this has already happened in social media, which is now the most important social platform in the world and the most important source of news and information. Every day, billions of people spend hours on social media. And social media is largely run by algorithms, by AIs. If you ask who is the editor of Facebook, of the Facebook newsfeed, who is the editor of TikTok, who recommends the next video, it's not a human being, it's an AI. And the decisions made by these AIs destabilize democracies all over the world. We are now in a situation when we have the most sophisticated information technology in human history, and humans are losing the ability to talk with each other rationally, to have a rational conversation, which is the foundation of democracy. Democracy, in essence, is a conversation. Now, for thousands of years, it was just impossible to hold large-scale conversations because the technology was not there. So the only examples we have of ancient democracies are from small city-states like Athens and Rome, where you can get a large part of the population together to the same physical space, like the agora or the forum, so people could actually have a conversation. There is no example of a large-scale democracy. Millions of people spread over a large country which is managed democratically. This became possible only in the modern age, first with the invention of newspapers, and then radio and television. They made large-scale democracy possible. Democracy is built on top of the information technology. Now we have a revolution in information technology, and as a result, we have an earthquake in democracy. And the most important thing to understand is the input of the AIs. Because the AIs that run social media, they were given by the companies the goal of increasing user engagement, which sounds like a good thing, engagement.
But some would argue that algorithms are not really AI, but processes. Is it the responsibility of the technology that everything is going wrong on social media? Or is it the responsibility of the companies behind it?
No, of course.
Just as you have OpenAI now with ChatGPT, you had
of
Facebook.
course, it's the responsibility of the companies, but we need to understand the mechanism of what happened. Because something new happened. The AIs that run social media are not a kind of automatic machines. They learn and change. They are intelligent. They are agents. The companies gave them a goal of increasing human user engagement, which means keeping people longer on the platform.
But are algorithms learning? I thought they were just like mathematics, and
No, they
AI
learn.
is something else.
They learn. I mean, they experimented. What happened with social media? They were given a goal, like YouTube told the YouTube algorithm, make people spend more time on YouTube because then we show more advertisements, we harvest more data, we make more money. This was the goal given by YouTube. Then the algorithms started experimenting and learning. And how do you keep people longer on the platform? So they experimented on billions of human guinea pigs, and they discovered that the easiest way to grab the attention of human beings, to keep them longer on the platform, is to press the hate button, or the fear button, or the greed button in the human mind. If you show people a certain video, some hate-filled conspiracy theory, which makes people feel very angry about somebody, they watch it, they share it with their friends, they look for more similar videos, they stay longer on the platform. Now, the algorithms had no idea what is the content of the video. They just learned that this type of video keeps humans longer on the platform, so they began to recommend this video to more and more people. And this was a major reason for the epidemic of conspiracy theories and fake news and toxic information and outrage, which is now destabilizing democracies all over the world. In one democracy after the other, in every country they have these special explanations why Republicans and Democrats can no longer have a rational conversation. And it's true, there are some unique reasons from American society and the economy and history. But when you see the same thing happening in Brazil, the same thing is happening in France, the same thing is happening in Israel, the same thing is happening in the Philippines. So it can't be these specific social or economic conditions. It's the underlying technology, the algorithms, the AIs that run the most important platforms, news platforms in the world. They deliberately stoke outrage and anger and fear. And this leads to the collapse of rational conversation. And again, the companies are, of course, ultimately responsible for it. YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, they are responsible. But we need to understand the mechanism. It's not that like 15 years ago, there was like this meeting of the heads of the social media companies and they thought, how do we bring democracy down? Mm-hmm. They didn't want it to happen.
But they don't take their responsibility either.
They are reluctant to take responsibility, absolutely. And in order to kind of correct this disaster, the public and governments need to understand how it happened. Because the defense of the social media companies today is to say, we don't want to censor anybody. They pretend, they now understand the mechanism, but they hide it. They claim that they don't want to censor human users, and they shift the blame for the spread of all this toxic information to the human users. But the problem is not the users. The problem is the algorithms. Every day, billions of people create all kinds of content. Some people create hate-filled conspiracy theories. Some people create cooking lessons. Some people create lessons in astrophysics, whatever, or sermons on compassion. You have all this content. Then it is the algorithms that decide what to promote. They are like the editors of a newspaper that, you know, from all the million things that happen today on the planet, you can only put 30 items in your newspaper or on the main headlines on television, and you can only put one story at the top of the front page or at the beginning of the main news broadcast. Mm-hmm. And this was the traditional job of human editors, to pick those. And now this is done by the AIs, and the AIs pick stories which undermine the ability to have a rational conversation, and the companies should be responsible for that. They shouldn't censor the human users. They should be responsible for the choices of their algorithms.
And still I have the feeling that a lot of people care, of course, but still a lot of people don't care. And they're like, hey, we got this social media, we got our smartphone, look at this amazing toy. And you saw what happened with Facebooks of the world. We let them do it, all these privacy scandals, disinformation scandals, etc. And now we have this new technology, and I have the feeling that we talk a little bit more, but still, what should happen that we all, as you also say in your book, that we all start the conversation of where is this AI bringing us? Because I have a lot of feeling that a lot of people, the digital gap is a real thing, I think.
Yeah.
I still meet a lot of people who are still struggling to download an app on their phone. How do we get those people and all of the other people into the conversation like we really need to talk about AI? How are we going to get there?
And we need to, first of all, to get people to understand what is happening. Otherwise, you cannot have a democratic debate if you have no knowledge, if you have no understanding.
How do we get the knowledge? Because people don't know what's going on.
I write books, you make television. This is how we get tried. This is what we do. Each of us try to do it in our own small way. And we need to find ways, again, to explain AI to somebody who is not a computer coder, doesn't have a PhD in computer science and can still understand. And, you know, I'll give you one example. In many countries around the world, the number one political issue today is immigration. And when you ask, why are people so concerned about immigration? They give you two reasons. The first reason is that the immigrants may take our resources and most of all our jobs. The second reason people give is that these immigrants come with new ideas about how to manage society and new cultural ideas which are different from our traditional ideas, and we are afraid of this social and cultural transition. These are the two main arguments, and they make sense to some extent. I mean, these are serious issues. Now think about AI. AI is an immigration wave from California of aliens. There are millions of aliens coming to this country and basically to every country on the planet. There are millions of aliens from California. They are going to take jobs, and they start with the most lucrative jobs. They don't start by washing dishes in restaurants. They start by taking the jobs of news editors, of bankers, of military generals. And they have very, very different ideas about how to manage society and how to manage our culture. So if you're concerned about these things, you need to be concerned about the immigrants from California far more than about the immigrants from any other place in the world.
You think that's the metaphor we can use to help people think about AI?
Yeah, because
one of the most hot topics in society lately? I
mean, I look at the debate, say, within European nations right now, and I would say, again, whatever you think about immigration or about other political issues, the issue in politics, the most important question in politics is the question of priority. What is the number one threat? What is the number one issue that we have to be tackling? And I think that people tend to focus on the wrong issues. That the European Union is tearing itself apart in this debate, in this argument about immigration policy. And in the meantime, it's losing the AI arms race, and it's ensuring that it will be a vassal of either the US or China when they win the arms race. And certainly the people who think about, dissolving the European Union, the only chance that smaller countries like Belgium or the Netherlands or whatever have of being a major player in the AI arms race and determining the shape of the future world is if you stand together as a unified bloc with a unified policy. Because if the EU stands together, it is still among the three most powerful forces in the world, certainly in economic and cultural and scientific terms. It has what it needs to be a third independent player instead of just tagging the lines of either the Americans or the Chinese. But if the EU falls apart and has no common policy, or just spends its energy in endless struggles about immigration and other local issues, it will just renounce its ability to shape its future.
Yeah, but we don't talk about it. There is maybe EU.
So we are not talking
we are
about
talking
it.
about. There is maybe EU legislation, but like local politicians, they don't talk about AI. They don't talk about the influence on our society in school, on work.
Local politicians, I mean, are answering in a way to the will of the voters.
I don't think really nobody knows what's going on in the end with AI and what's coming.
So again, this is why scholars like myself and journalists like you, we are trying to raise awareness and thereby change the debates. Ultimately, politicians, at least in democracies, they are responsive to the wishes of the voters. At present, AI is not a major issue in any election campaign, even in the US, where awareness of the AI revolution is somewhat higher than in Europe. You follow the Trump Harris campaigns and the debate they had. They talk a lot about immigration. They don't talk almost at all about AI. What's Trump's policy on AI? The impression is that Elon Musk is supporting Trump, thinking that he will be the AI czar and that he will basically make the most important decisions maybe in the history of humanity single-handedly.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Looking at X.com right now.
This is very dangerous. I mean, he is close to reaching his goal. Again, his assumption is that if Trump is elected, then Trump doesn't care much about AI and doesn't know much about AI. So Musk assumes that Trump will attract all the attention. And meanwhile, Elon Musk could shape the policy of the US on AI and to a large extent shape the human future, the future of all humans, not just Americans. Because the AI revolution, which is currently led by the US, will have a tremendous impact on every country on this planet. And this is, of course, very dangerous to allow a single country and a single individual or a very small number of individuals to make such important decisions. I mean, we saw it in the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, that the few countries that industrialized first, they went on to conquer and dominate and exploit the rest of the world. And it took the rest of the world more than a century to liberate themselves from the domination of
like Great Britain, like
Great Britain and Japan and Belgium with the empire in the Congo. The idea in the 19th century is that if you industrialize, you build an empire. Even a very small nation like Belgium built a big empire. And this could happen again, this time with different countries. The countries that lead the AI revolution, they will have the power to dominate and exploit everybody else. I mean, the gap in the 19th century between a country like Belgium that had steam engines and machine guns and countries or people that did not have steam engines and machine guns, it was quite a big gap. But the gap in the 21st century between countries that have AI capacity and countries that don't will be orders of magnitude bigger than what we saw in the 19th century.
Are we ready for an AI-based society?
No, we are not. And this is, I think, the main problem, that the technology in itself is not evil. It can create immense good for humanity. What we lack is a model for how to build a benign AI society. Now, again, going back to the Industrial Revolution, the problem with the Industrial Revolution was exactly that. When trains and steam engines and telegraph and later the radio and cars, they came along, nobody knew how to build a benign industrial society. So people experimented. And imperialism was one big experiment in building industrial societies, and there was a rational argument there. A lot of people in places like Belgium in the 19th century, they argued that industry requires raw materials and it requires markets. If we industrialize and we don't build an empire, so our competitors could block our access to raw materials and markets and we will collapse. So the only way to build an industrial society is to build an empire. We now know that this was not true, but they didn't know. Another big experiment was modern totalitarianism. Both communists and fascists argued that the only way to build an industrial society was to build a totalitarian regime, because industry releases such immense forces, both creative and destructive, that the only way to keep it under control and to utilize it is by creating totalitarian regimes that control the totality of people's lives, control not just politics, but also the economy and society and culture. And in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, lots of people were convinced that Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini were correct. That the only way, if you want to build an industrial society, you must do it like the Nazis and the communists, otherwise it doesn't work. Now we know better. But if you think about the process, like it took humanity something like 200 years to experiment, to learn the lessons, and to finally, by the end of the 20th century, find a way to build benign industrial societies. If we have to go through the same process again with AI, that again we'll have to build empires and establish totalitarian regimes and fight world wars with the power of AI, until we realize what is the best model, this will be very, very bad news for billions of people across the world.
So what is the key lesson to learn from the history?
That the problem is not the technology, the problem is not the destination, the problem is the way. That when you have a new and very powerful technology, how do you adapt society? How do you build a new kind of society? And we need time. The most basic lesson is slow down and don't rush to conclusions.
But are they slowing down? Because
no, they are just moving faster and faster.
Yeah, we need time, but the developers are going and going and going and developing, and the companies also. Because
they are caught in this kind of arms race mentality. Like when I talk with people in places like Silicon Valley, so they often tell me, they often say, we are aware of the threats, maybe better than anybody else. And actually, we would like to slow down. We would like to give humanity more time to understand what is happening, debate it, think carefully about what to do. But if we slow down and our competitors do not slow down, the competitors in the other companies or or across the ocean in China, they will win the race. And we can't allow this to happen. So we have to move faster. And when you talk with the other companies or you talk with the Chinese, they tell you the same thing. We would like to slow down, but we can't trust our competitors. So we have this paradox that basically the AI race is ultimately fueled by lacking trust in humans. We can't trust the other humans, so we have to develop AI faster. But then you ask them, do you think you could trust the AIs? And they tell you yes. The same people who say we can't trust the humans, they gamble the future of humanity on their ability to trust the AIs.
How do we get here? That we don't trust humans, but we trust AI.
I mean, there are two ways to understand it. First of all, AI is being kind of, at least now, designed by human engineers. So they have such confidence in their engineering abilities that they think they can engineer something they can trust more than human beings. And this is, of course, a huge, huge gamble. Because, as I said repeatedly, AI is an agent. It learns and changes by itself. At first, you design it, but then it begins to change, and you don't have control how the process of change will develop and what the next generation and the next generation of AI would actually look like. So this is a very, very big and dangerous gamble. It's basically like you are in a relationship which has all kinds of difficulties, and you say, okay, I dump my current boyfriend or husband or wife, and let's try a new relationship. I think it will work better. So they are basically telling us, like people like Elon Musk, we are dumping the humans. This relationship doesn't work. We think the relationship with the AI will work better.
Are you hopeful in the end that humankind will overcome this?
I think
threat, but you say it's a threat.
I try to be realistic. I mean, I can't give you a guarantee that in the end, don't worry, everything will be okay. I don't know. I do know that at the present moment, we are still in control and that we have the resources, we have the knowledge necessary to make the right decisions. Whether we will actually make them, that's history. What I learned as a historian is that we should never underestimate human stupidity. It's one of the most powerful forces in history, but at the same time, we should never despair of human wisdom. Because you see instances of both throughout history. People doing the stupidest things, but then people kind of behaving in really amazing, noble and magnanimous and compassionate ways that, we are very complex beings.
So we will overcome this in the end.
I don't know. I mean, it depends. Again, it depends.
Trying to find something hopeful.
We shouldn't be hopeful. We should be responsible. I mean, the message, say, to people who are watching us is that don't be hopeful, be responsible. Responsible means make the right decisions in the coming years as voters, as consumers, as citizens. And to make the right decisions, the first step is simply to understand what is happening. Don't rush to conclusions. Very often when people encounter a big problem, they want an immediate solution. Okay, tell us what to do. No. First, really understand the problem deeply, because what we see again and again in history is that people rush to solve a problem, they solve the problem, then they realize they solved the wrong problem. And their solution actually created a much more difficult situation. So, again, we are under this immense time pressure, and nevertheless, we need to slow down.
And take responsibility.
And take responsibility.
Like everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.